Ong Bak 2. The beginning takes the audience far away from the modern-day setting of the original Ong Bak. Instead, the film travels back to 15th century Thailand, where the story follows Tien, a young man whose life is destroyed by violence, betrayal, and the loss of his family. Rather than presenting Tien as an already unstoppable fighter, the movie focuses on the painful process that transforms him into one. At the heart of the film is a simple but powerful idea. What happens when a child loses everything and turns his grief into a weapon? Tien begins his journey as the son of a respected nobleman. He grows up surrounded by privilege, but that safety does not last. Political conflict and ruthless ambition eventually bring tragedy to his family. His father is murdered, his mother is killed, and Tien is left with almost nothing except memories of the people he loved. But Tien's story does not immediately become a straightforward revenge tale. The film deliberately shows that becoming a warrior is not simply about learning how to punch harder or move faster. Tien must first survive a brutal world, overcome fear, understand different fighting styles, and eventually confront the anger consuming him. This makes Ong Bak 2 different from many conventional martial arts movies. The spectacular combat is important, but the deeper story is about transformation. Tien does not simply learn how to fight. He learns how to become the fighter he believes he needs to be. A dark beginning. The story establishes its harsh atmosphere very early. Tien's childhood is shattered when violence enters his home. His father, a powerful figure, becomes a target of political enemies, and the family's position cannot protect them forever. The young Tien witnesses the collapse of the world he once understood. His father is murdered. His mother is taken from him. And suddenly, the future that once seemed guaranteed disappears. For Tien, this is more than the loss of family. It is the destruction of his identity. He was raised as the son of a nobleman, but now he is simply a survivor. That distinction becomes extremely important. Instead of allowing Tien to remain protected, fate forces him into a world where strength determines who survives. He is eventually captured by slave traders and finds himself surrounded by people who have no reason to care whether he lives or dies. This is where his transformation truly begins. The slave trade and Tien's new reality. Tien's capture introduces another important aspect of the film, the world outside his former privileged life. He is no longer surrounded by servants, family, or protection. He is treated as property. The experience strips away whatever remains of his former identity. For a young man who has lost his parents, this could have been the final destruction of his spirit. Instead, Tien's fighting ability begins to emerge. His captors discover that there is something unusual about him. He possesses natural determination, courage, and an instinct for combat. But natural talent alone is not enough. Tien still lacks the knowledge and discipline required to become a true martial artist. His future changes when he encounters a group of warriors and teachers who recognize his potential. Rather than simply teaching him one style, they expose him to a wide variety of martial arts. This becomes one of the most fascinating elements of the movie. A warrior is built from many styles. Tien's development is not presented as a simple master and student relationship. His training becomes a journey through different forms of combat. He learns techniques inspired by various martial arts traditions, including Muay Thai and other regional fighting disciplines. Each style gives him something different. One teaches him power. Another teaches him speed. Another gives him flexibility. Another emphasizes precision. And others teach him how to use weapons, movement, deception, and timing. The result is a fighter who does not fit neatly into a single martial arts category. Tien becomes adaptable. That adaptability is crucial because his enemies do not fight in predictable ways. A warrior who relies on only one technique can eventually be studied and defeated. Tien, however, is constantly changing his approach. One moment he may attack with devastating kicks. The next, he may use an opponent's momentum against them. Then his movements can become faster, more acrobatic, or more deceptive. The training sequences therefore serve a larger purpose than simply showing impressive choreography. They explain how Tien becomes Tien. Tony Jaa's physical performance. Tony Jaa's performance is central to this transformation. The actor had already become internationally recognized for his physical abilities through Ong Bak, but Ong Bak too gives him an opportunity to build a more complex character around those skills. Tien is not simply a fearless action hero. He is angry. He is traumatized. He is searching for purpose. And his fighting ability develops alongside those emotions. Tony Jaa's physical performance makes the character's evolution easy to understand without requiring constant dialogue. As Tien becomes more experienced, his movements become more confident and controlled. The choreography also emphasizes different fighting styles rather than making every battle look identical. This variety gives the action sequences their distinctive identity. Instead of asking the audience to watch another generic fight, the movie repeatedly asks a more interesting question. What can Tien do now that he couldn't do before? Every new technique becomes another step in his transformation. The importance of the teachers. The people who train Tien play an essential role in his development. They give him something his old life could no longer provide: guidance. Tien's childhood had been destroyed by people using power for selfish reasons. His teachers introduce him to a different understanding of strength. Strength is not only about defeating another person. It requires discipline. It requires patience. It requires observation. It requires control. And most importantly, it requires understanding oneself. This creates an interesting contradiction within Tien. He is learning discipline while being driven by revenge. He is being taught control while his anger continues to grow. He is becoming physically stronger while emotionally remaining trapped in the tragedy of his childhood. The more powerful Tien becomes, the closer he moves toward the revenge he has been imagining. And that creates the film's central tension. Revenge becomes Tien's purpose. After losing his parents, Tien has very little left to hold on to. Revenge becomes his motivation. For him, defeating the people responsible is not simply about justice. It is deeply personal. He wants the people who destroyed his family to experience consequences. This makes his journey emotionally understandable, but it also makes it dangerous. Revenge can give someone purpose, but it can also consume them. Tien's training therefore has two sides. On one side, he becomes disciplined and powerful. On the other, every new skill brings him closer to becoming an instrument of violence. The film does not treat this contradiction lightly. Tien is becoming a warrior because he believes he has no other choice. But the question remains. When revenge becomes the center of your life, what happens to the person you were before the tragedy? That question gives the action a deeper emotional dimension. A historical world filled with violence. The 15th century setting also contributes significantly to the film's atmosphere. Unlike a modern action movie filled with guns, cars, and technology, Ong Bak 2 places its characters in a world where physical combat is central to survival. Weapons are primitive compared with modern standards, but that does not make the world less dangerous. Swords, blades, staffs, clubs, and other traditional weapons can become deadly tools. The movie uses this historical setting to create a distinctive visual identity. Villages, forests, temples, palaces, and battlefields become part of the story's world. The environment itself often feels dangerous. A forest can hide an enemy. A village can become a battlefield. A training ground can become the place where a future warrior is born. This setting helps separate Ong Bak 2 from the original movie while maintaining the franchise's emphasis on physical martial arts. The action is part of the story. One of the film's greatest strengths is that the action is not simply decoration. Tien's fighting abilities develop throughout the story, and the audience can see that progression. Early in his journey, he is inexperienced. Later, he becomes increasingly capable. Eventually, he can face multiple opponents with extraordinary confidence. This gradual development makes the combat sequences feel connected to the narrative. The fight is not merely hero meets villains. Hero wins. Instead, each confrontation demonstrates what Tien has learned. His body becomes a record of his experiences. Every technique represents a lesson. Every victory represents progress. And every defeat reminds him that there is still more to learn. The dance of martial arts. The choreography in Ong Bak 2 is particularly memorable because of its physical variety. The film incorporates traditional Muay Thai techniques alongside other fighting methods, producing a style that feels fluid and unpredictable. Tien can move from one technique to another without warning. His attacks are sometimes explosive, sometimes graceful, and sometimes brutally direct. The choreography also makes use of environmental movement. Instead of treating the background as meaningless scenery, the film often allows fighters to interact with their surroundings. Walls, platforms, trees, weapons, and uneven terrain can all influence a fight. This gives the action a sense of physicality. The characters appear to exist within the environment rather than fighting inside an empty space designed solely for choreography. Why Tien's training matters. The training sequences are among the most important parts of the movie because they show the transformation from victim to warrior. At the beginning, Tien is someone to whom terrible things happen. By the end of his development, he is someone capable of confronting the forces that once terrified him. That transformation is satisfying because the movie makes the audience watch the process. Tien does not wake up one morning as a master. He struggles. He practices. He fails. He learns. He adapts. And he keeps going. This is one of the reasons Tony Jaa's physical performance works so well in the film. The character's body tells the story. As his confidence increases, his movements become more precise. As his experience grows, he becomes more efficient. The fighter we see later in the movie is not the same person we met at the beginning. The emotional cost of becoming a warrior. However, the movie also reminds us that becoming stronger does not automatically make Tien happier. In fact, the opposite may be true. The stronger he becomes, the more clearly he understands how much he has lost. His parents cannot return. His childhood cannot be restored. His former life is gone. No martial arts technique can change that. This gives Tien's revenge journey a tragic quality. He may defeat enemies, but every victory still exists in the shadow of his family's deaths. The film therefore presents strength as both a gift and a burden. Tien gains the ability to fight back, but he also becomes increasingly connected to the violence that destroyed his life. The villainous forces. The forces opposing Tien represent more than individual enemies. They are connected to a larger world of political ambition, betrayal, violence, and power. Tien's personal tragedy is therefore tied to a broader struggle. The people responsible for his suffering are not simply random criminals. They are part of a system in which power can determine who lives and who dies. This makes Tien's mission increasingly dangerous. He is not simply searching for one opponent. He is moving toward a world filled with powerful figures who have their own agendas. As Tien gets closer to revenge, he discovers that the truth surrounding his family is more complicated than it first appeared. This adds mystery to the story and prevents it from becoming a simple revenge formula. Tien's greatest enemy may be his anger. Perhaps the most interesting way to understand Tien's journey is to see his anger as an enemy of its own. His physical opponents can be defeated. His anger is much harder to overcome. The martial arts training teaches him to control his body, but controlling his emotions is a different challenge. Every time Tien remembers his parents, the pain returns. Every time he encounters someone connected to his past, his desire for revenge becomes stronger. It is a battle between two versions of Tien. The young man who wants justice for his family, and the warrior who risks becoming consumed by revenge. The film's visual identity. Visually, Ong Bak aims for a dramatic historical atmosphere. The costumes, locations, traditional weapons, and martial arts create a world that feels very different from modern action cinema. The film's landscapes also contribute to its scale. Large outdoor locations make Tien's journey feel almost legendary. The forests and rural landscapes provide a contrast to the intensity of the battles. At times, the movie feels like a historical martial arts epic rather than a conventional revenge thriller. That ambition is important. The filmmakers were not simply trying to repeat Ong Bak. They wanted to expand the world and present a new chapter built around tradition, history, and martial arts mythology. Tony Jaa as star and co-director. Another interesting aspect of Ong Bak 2 is Tony Jaa's involvement behind the camera. He co-directed the film alongside Pana Ritikrai, a major figure in Thai action cinema and an important influence on Jaa's martial arts career. Their collaboration helped shape the film's emphasis on physical performance and traditional fighting techniques. Tony Jaa's role therefore extended beyond acting. He was deeply involved in creating the action style that defines the movie. This is particularly important because the film depends heavily on physical storytelling. Dialogue alone cannot explain Tien's transformation. The choreography has to communicate it. The camera has to capture it. And the performer has to execute it convincingly. The combination of these elements gives the film its distinctive energy. A different kind of prequel. Although Ong Bak 2 is connected to the Ong Bak name, it functions as a standalone prequel rather than simply continuing the previous film's story. This allows the filmmakers to create a different historical setting and introduce a different protagonist's journey. The connection to Ong Bak is therefore more thematic and franchise-based than dependent on repeating the original film storyline. For viewers familiar with Tony Jaa, the movie provides another opportunity to experience his martial arts abilities. For newcomers, the story can be approached as a historical revenge adventure centered on Tien. That independence makes the film accessible even to people who have not recently watched the first movie. The meaning behind the title. The title Ong Bak 2, the beginning suggests that audiences are being taken back to an earlier point in the franchise's mythology. But the word beginning can also describe Tien's own transformation. This is the beginning of his life as a warrior. The beginning of his quest. The beginning of his relationship with martial arts. And, in many ways, the beginning of his struggle to understand what revenge will cost him. The title therefore fits the film on more than one level. Reception and box office success. Released in Thailand on December 4, 2008, Ong Bak 2 became a box office success. Its commercial performance demonstrated the continued international appeal of Thai martial arts cinema and Tony Jaa's reputation as an action performer. The movie arrived at a time when martial arts films were increasingly reaching audiences around the world through home video, international distribution, and growing interest in Asian action cinema. Tony Jaa had already established himself as a major physical performer through Ong Bak and Tom Yum Goong, and Ong Bak 2 continued to showcase the qualities that made his work distinctive. The film's success also helped maintain interest in the story, leading to Ong Bak 3 in 2010. Why the movie stands out. What makes Ong Bak 2 memorable is not simply the number of fights. It is the way the film connects martial arts with character development. Tien's fighting style becomes an expression of his journey. When he is inexperienced, his combat is different. When he becomes trained, his movements change. When he becomes a master, his fighting feels almost effortless. The progression gives the action meaning. The audience is not simply watching Tony Jaa perform difficult techniques. We are watching a character evolve through physical discipline. The tragedy beneath the spectacle. Beneath the spectacular action is a surprisingly tragic story. Tien loses his family. He loses his social position. He loses his childhood. And he is forced to build a new identity from the ruins. His transformation into a warrior may appear heroic, but the movie constantly reminds us of what caused it. Without tragedy, there would be no revenge. Without revenge, there would be no quest. And without the quest, Tien may never have become the warrior the audience eventually sees. That makes his strength inseparable from his pain. Final perspective. Ong Bak 2. The beginning is ultimately the story of a young man who turns personal tragedy into a relentless pursuit of strength. Set in 15th century Thailand, the film follows Tien from a privileged childhood into a world of violence, captivity, martial arts training, betrayal, and revenge. Along the way, he encounters teachers who expose him to a remarkable variety of fighting techniques. Under their guidance, he evolves from an inexperienced survivor into a formidable martial artist. But the transformation comes at a cost. Tien's physical strength grows, yet his emotional wounds remain. He learns how to control his body, but controlling his anger proves far more difficult. That contradiction gives the movie its emotional core. The action may be the biggest attraction, but Tien's transformation is what gives the action purpose. Every kick, strike, weapon, and acrobatic movement represents another stage in his journey. By the time he becomes the warrior he has been training to become, the audience understands that this power was not given to him. He earned it through suffering, discipline, and determination. And yet, the most important question remains unanswered. The connection to Ong Bak is therefore more thematic and franchise-based than dependent on repeating the original film storyline. For viewers familiar with Tony Jaa, the movie provides another opportunity to experience his martial arts abilities. For newcomers, the story can be approached as a historical revenge adventure centered on Tien. That independence makes the film accessible even to people who have not recently watched the first movie. The meaning behind the title. The title Ong Bak 2, the beginning suggests that audiences are being taken back to an earlier point in the franchise's mythology. But the word beginning can also describe Tien's own transformation. This is the beginning of his life as a warrior. The beginning of his quest. The beginning of his relationship with martial arts. And, in many ways, the beginning of his struggle to understand what revenge will cost him. The title therefore fits the film on more than one level. Reception and box office success. Released in Thailand on December 4, 2008, Ong Bak 2 became a box office success. Its commercial performance demonstrated the continued international appeal of Thai martial arts cinema and Tony Jaa's reputation as an action performer. The movie arrived at a time when martial arts films were increasingly reaching audiences around the world through home video, international distribution, and growing interest in Asian action cinema. Tony Jaa had already established himself as a major physical performer through Ong Bak and Tom Yum Goong, and Ong Bak 2 continued to showcase the qualities that made his work distinctive. The film's success also helped maintain interest in the story, leading to Ong Bak 3 in 2010. Why the movie stands out. What makes Ong Bak 2 memorable is not simply the number of fights. It is the way the film connects martial arts with character development. Tien's fighting style becomes an expression of his journey. When he is inexperienced, his combat is different. When he becomes trained, his movements change. When he becomes a master, his fighting feels almost effortless. The progression gives the action meaning. The audience is not simply watching Tony Jaa perform difficult techniques. We are watching a character evolve through physical discipline. The tragedy beneath the spectacle. Beneath the spectacular action is a surprisingly tragic story. Tien loses his family. He loses his social position. He loses his childhood. And he is forced to build a new identity from the ruins. His transformation into a warrior may appear heroic, but the movie constantly reminds us of what caused it. Without tragedy, there would be no revenge. Without revenge, there would be no quest. And without the quest, Tien may never have become the warrior the audience eventually sees. That makes his strength inseparable from his pain. Final perspective. Ong Bak 2. The beginning is ultimately the story of a young man who turns personal tragedy into a relentless pursuit of strength. Set in 15th century Thailand, the film follows Tien from a privileged childhood into a world of violence, captivity, martial arts training, betrayal, and revenge. Along the way, he encounters teachers who expose him to a remarkable variety of fighting techniques. Under their guidance, he evolves from an inexperienced survivor into a formidable martial artist. But the transformation comes at a cost. Tien's physical strength grows, yet his emotional wounds remain. He learns how to control his body, but controlling his anger proves far more difficult. That contradiction gives the movie its emotional core. The action may be the biggest attraction, but Tien's transformation is what gives the action purpose. Every kick, strike, weapon, and acrobatic movement represents another stage in his journey. By the time he becomes the warrior he has been training to become, the audience understands that this power was not given to him. He earned it through suffering, discipline, and determination. And yet, the most important question remains unanswered. Will becoming powerful finally give Tien justice, or will his desire for revenge consume the last part of himself that remains? That question is what makes Ong Bak 2 more than a martial arts showcase. It is a story about grief becoming anger, anger becoming discipline, and discipline becoming power. The film was released in 2008 and later followed by Ong Bak 3 in 2010, continuing Tien's story. For fans of Tony Jaa and traditional martial arts cinema, Ong Bak 2, the beginning remains a striking example of how physical action can be used to tell a character's story. Its historical setting, intense choreography, traditional fighting techniques, and tragic revenge narrative combine to create an experience that feels both brutal and visually spectacular. And at the center of it all is Tien, a young man who loses everything, learns to fight, and begins a dangerous journey toward revenge. Imagine a kingdom where political ambition can destroy an entire family overnight, where a child born into privilege can suddenly become a hunted fugitive, and where survival depends not only on courage but on the ability to master the ancient arts of combat. This is the world of Ong Bak 2, The Beginning, a 2008 Thai martial arts film directed by Tony Jaa and Panna Ritikrai. Set in 1431 during the reign of King Boromaracathirat II of the Ayutthaya Kingdom, the story introduces us to Tien, the young son of the noble Lord Sihadecho. At first glance, Tien seems destined for a life of comfort and status. He belongs to an influential family, has a respected father, and lives within a world where his future should already be secure. But his father understands something that Tien does not. Their position has made them enemies. And one of those enemies is Lord Rajasena, a powerful commander of the Ayutthaya Royal Guard. Rajasena is not merely ambitious. He is secretly plotting against Sihadecho and his family. The danger is growing, and Lord Sihadecho knows that his son's life could be in serious danger if Tien remains close to the political conflict. So instead of preparing his son to become a warrior, Sihadecho makes a surprising decision. He sends Tien away. Not to a military camp. Not to a palace. Not to another noble family. He sends him to a remote village to learn something completely different: dance. And this decision becomes one of the most important choices in Tien's life. A noble father trying to protect his son. Lord Sihadecho understands the dangerous political environment surrounding his family. He knows that Lord Rajasena has been plotting against them, and he realizes that keeping Tien close could make the boy an easy target. Rather than teaching his son the skills of warfare, Sihadecho chooses a quieter path. Tien is sent to learn dance under Master Bois. For Tien, however, this peaceful life feels almost insulting. He is the son of a nobleman. He has been raised in a world where strength, status, and military ability are respected. He does not understand why his father would want him to spend his time learning dance instead of learning how to fight. From Tien's perspective, dancing seems useless. Why learn graceful movements when enemies might be preparing to attack his family? Why practice traditional performance when warriors are training with weapons? Why be taught something peaceful when the world around him appears to be filled with danger? But Lord Sihadecho sees what Tien cannot. He is not trying to make his son weak. He is trying to keep him alive. This creates an interesting irony at the beginning of the story. Tien believes that learning dance is preventing him from becoming strong, but those movements will eventually become connected to the skills that make him a formidable warrior. Tien and Pim. While living in the remote village, Tien gradually becomes acquainted with the people around him. One of the most important people he meets is Pim, an orphan girl. At first, Tien is not particularly enthusiastic about his new surroundings. He misses the world he knew and struggles to understand why he has been sent away. But Pim becomes his friend. Their relationship gives the young Tien something that his noble upbringing could not provide: an ordinary human connection. Pim does not treat him simply as the son of a powerful lord. Instead, she interacts with him as another child. Their friendship brings a softer side to Tien's character. Before the revenge, before the bloodshed, before the martial arts, there is simply a boy trying to understand his new life. This is important because the tragedy that follows becomes much more meaningful when we understand the peaceful life Tien could have had. He could have grown up. He could have maintained friendships. He could have returned to his family. He could have lived a completely different life. But the political ambitions of powerful men are about to destroy that possibility. The betrayal inside the family. The danger eventually reaches Tien. One of Sihadecho's own guards betrays him. The guard attempts to kidnap the young Tien, revealing just how deeply the conspiracy has penetrated the family. Fortunately, Tien does not face this danger completely alone. A loyalist intervenes and helps him escape. For the young boy, this is a terrifying experience. The people who were supposed to protect him can no longer be trusted. The world he once considered safe is beginning to collapse. And while Tien escapes, something far worse is happening elsewhere. His father and the rest of the household are about to face the full force of Rajasena's conspiracy. The massacre of Tien's family. In one of the story's darkest turns, Lord Rajasena and his forces attack Sihadecho's household. The result is devastating. Tien's father and members of the household are massacred. The attack is made even more mysterious by the presence of a masked assassin, whose identity becomes part of the larger mystery surrounding Tien's past. For Tien, the consequences are unimaginable. The child who once complained about being sent away from home now has no home to return to. The people he believed would always be there for him are gone. His father is dead. His family has been destroyed. And the political conspiracy that caused it all is still active. At this moment, Tien's life changes permanently. He is no longer simply a nobleman's son. He becomes a survivor. A boy running for his life. After the massacre, Tien is forced to flee. Enemy soldiers are searching for him, and if they capture him, his life will almost certainly be over. The contrast between Tien's former life and his new reality could not be greater. He once lived in a noble household. Now he is running through dangerous territory with soldiers chasing him. He has no army, no palace, no protection, and no idea where his future will lead. Eventually, Tien reaches the forest. He may believe that escaping into the wilderness will save him, but another danger is waiting. He is captured by slave traders. Instead of finding safety, Tien has fallen into another nightmare. Tien becomes a prisoner. The slave traders see Tien as valuable property, but they quickly discover that this particular prisoner is not willing to surrender. Tien fights back. His resistance surprises them. He is still young and inexperienced, but there is already something unusual about him. He refuses to accept defeat. His determination is stronger than his circumstances. The slave traders eventually decide to punish him in a horrifying way. They throw him into a pool containing a Siamese crocodile. It appears to be the end. Tien has already lost his family. Now he is trapped in the water with a deadly predator while his captors watch. But the young boy refuses to give up. His struggle attracts the attention of another group nearby. And this is where Tien's fate changes once again. The Far Beak crew arrive. A band of warriors, martial artists, and outlaws known as the Far Beak crew attacks the slave traders. The name is associated with the image of the Garuda's wing, fitting the group's powerful and almost legendary reputation. They are not ordinary criminals. They are skilled fighters who have developed their own distinctive abilities. Their intervention saves Tien from the slave traders. But one member of the group becomes particularly interested in the boy. His name is Chernang. Chernang is the leader of the Far Beak crew. When he sees Tien's determination and physical ability, he realizes that this boy may possess something special. Tien is not trained. He is not yet a master. But he has something that cannot easily be taught. Sheer willpower. Chernang recognizes potential. Instead of leaving Tien behind, he brings him back to the group's village. This decision becomes the turning point of Tien's life. The prophecy. Once Tien arrives at the village, a soothsayer examines him. The prediction is extraordinary. Tien is believed to be destined for greatness as a warrior. For someone who has lost everything, this prediction gives his life a new direction. But it is important to remember that Tien's destiny is not created by prophecy alone. He still has to earn it. He has to train. He has to suffer. He has to learn. He has to face tests that will challenge both his body and his mind. Chernang sees the potential in him and offers Tien the opportunity to become part of the Far Beak crew. Tien accepts. And this is where the real transformation begins. From survivor to warrior. Tien's new life is completely different from the one he knew as a child. He is no longer being protected by a noble household. Instead, he is surrounded by fighters. These warriors become his new family. They teach him how to survive. They introduce him to combat. They challenge his limitations. And they force him to discover what he is truly capable of. The training is not presented as an easy path. Tien must earn his place. He cannot simply be accepted because of his noble background. The Far Beak crew judge him based on his abilities, determination, and willingness to endure hardship. This is an important stage in his character development. For the first time, Tien's identity is no longer determined by his family name. He must build his own reputation. Learning the language of combat. Under the guidance of experienced martial artists, Tien begins learning different forms of fighting. This is one of the defining features of Ong Bak 2. The film does not limit Tien to a single fighting style. Instead, his development is presented as a combination of different martial arts traditions. He learns how to use his hands, his elbows, his knees, his legs, his body movement, and eventually, various weapons. The training creates a fighter who is versatile rather than predictable. This also gives Tony Jaa the opportunity to showcase different forms of physical choreography. Every technique becomes another piece of Tien's transformation. The frightened child from the opening of the story slowly disappears. In his place, a disciplined warrior begins to emerge. The tests of the far beat recruit. Years pass. Tien continues training. But becoming a true member of the far beat recruit requires more than simply knowing how to fight. He must undergo a series of tests. These tests challenge his physical ability, courage, discipline, and determination. They are designed to determine whether he truly belongs among the warriors. Tien does not give up. He passes the tests. And his achievement changes his position within the group. Chernang no longer sees him merely as a promising young fighter. He sees him as family. Chernang becomes Tien's father figure. Chernang's decision to adopt Tien is one of the most important emotional developments in the story. Tien lost his biological father when he was still young. Now he has found another father figure. Chernang gives him guidance, protection, and a place to belong. He also gives Tien something he desperately needs: purpose. Chernang eventually declares Tien his adopted son and heir. This is a major transformation. The boy who once had no family now has a new one. The fugitive who had been hunted through the forest has become a respected warrior. And the child who was powerless against his family's enemies is becoming strong enough to confront them. Tien becomes a leader. Tien's rise continues. He eventually becomes the field leader of the far beat recruit. This position demonstrates how far he has come. He is no longer simply following others. He is leading them. His years of training have transformed him into a capable warrior and commander. The skills he learned have become second nature. His movements are faster. His attacks are more precise. His confidence is stronger. But the memories of his family have never disappeared. Beneath the warrior is still the same young man who witnessed his world collapse. And now that he has the ability to fight, his thoughts return to the people responsible. The past comes back. Tien eventually tracks down the slave traders who once captured him. This confrontation is significant because it shows how much he has changed. When Tien was thrown into the crocodile pool, he was a frightened prisoner struggling simply to survive. Now he returns as a highly trained martial artist. The people who once believed they could control him no longer have that power. Tien defeats them. The scene demonstrates the transformation in the clearest possible way. The helpless boy has become the hunter. The prisoner has become the warrior. The victim has become the one delivering judgment. The crocodile and the circle of revenge. Tien's confrontation with the slave traders also creates a disturbing parallel with his own past. The leader who once threw Tien into the crocodile-infested pool now faces the same threat. Tien throws him to the crocodiles. It is a moment of revenge, but it also reveals something important about Tien. He has begun to embrace the brutal logic of the world that hurt him. The violence he experienced is now being returned to others. This raises an uncomfortable question. Is Tien achieving justice, or is he becoming shaped by the same cruelty that destroyed his childhood? The movie does not make that question easy to answer. Tien has legitimate reasons to seek revenge. But revenge has a way of changing people. The blood oath. After confronting the slave traders, Tien makes a blood oath. His goal is clear. He will avenge his family. This is no longer simply a memory from childhood. It becomes a mission. Chernang understands Tien's desire. Instead of stopping him, he encourages him to complete the journey. He promises Tien that if he returns, he will become the new leader of the far beat recruit. This gives Tien an extraordinary opportunity. He could remain with his adopted family and eventually inherit their leadership. But first, he must face the ghosts of his past. He must return to the world that destroyed his original family. And that means confronting Lord Rajasena. Tien walks toward his enemy. Tien travels alone. This is significant. For much of his life, other people have influenced his path. His father sent him away. A loyalist helped him escape. Slave traders captured him. The Far-Beak Kroot rescued him. Chernang trained him. But now Tien chooses his own path. He goes directly toward the man he believes is responsible for his family's destruction. He is no longer a helpless child. He is no longer running away. This time, he is moving toward danger. Rajasena's palace. Lord Rajasena is holding a grand celebration at his palace. The event is designed to proclaim his power and demonstrate his influence. The atmosphere is one of wealth, confidence, and political authority. Rajasena appears to have everything: power, status, followers, and control. But he does not realize that his greatest enemy has entered his world. Tien arrives in disguise. Rather than attacking openly, he uses deception to gain access to the palace. His earlier exposure to dance becomes unexpectedly important. The skill that Tien once considered useless is now part of his strategy. This is a beautiful example of how the story connects Tien's childhood to his later life. His father sent him away to learn dance because he wanted to keep him safe. Years later, those same skills helped Tien infiltrate the palace of the man who destroyed his family. What once seemed like a pointless lesson becomes an unexpected weapon. Pim returns. During the celebration, a dance is performed by an adult Pim. This is a significant moment because Pim is not merely a character from Tien's childhood anymore. She represents the life he lost. Seeing her again brings the past back into the present. The peaceful village. His childhood. His old friendship. The time before his family was destroyed. All of it returns in a single moment. But Tien cannot remain in the past. He has come for revenge. The infiltration. Dressed as a con dancer, Tien moves through the palace. The disguise allows him to approach Rajasena without immediately revealing his identity. This sequence combines performance, deception, and martial arts. Tien uses the very skills he once disliked to enter the heart of his enemy's power. The contrast is striking. The boy who once wanted to become a warrior was sent away to learn dance. Now the warrior uses dance as part of his attack. His father's decision has come full circle. The attack on Rajasena. Eventually, Tien reaches Rajasena. The confrontation is charged with years of anger. Tien has spent much of his life preparing for this moment. He has trained. He has suffered. He has fought. He has risen through the ranks of the Far-Beak Kroot. And now he finally stands before the man connected to his family's destruction. Tien attacks. The confrontation becomes a violent culmination of his revenge journey. Rajasena's power and position suddenly mean very little. For Tien, this is personal. The battle represents everything he has been working toward since childhood. And when Tien appears to cut Rajasena down, it seems as though his mission has finally succeeded. But Ong Bak too is not interested in making the journey quite that simple. The illusion of victory. Tien appears to have achieved what he wanted. Rajasena has been attacked. The man responsible for his suffering appears to be defeated. For a conventional revenge story, this might be the moment when the hero wins and the story ends. But Tien's journey is more complicated. The film deliberately leaves room for uncertainty, mystery, and further conflict. The masked assassin remains an important part of the story's larger mystery. The truth surrounding Tien's family has not necessarily been completely revealed. And Tien's emotional journey is far from finished. This is why the events of Ong Bak 2 lead naturally toward Ong Bak 3. The bigger meaning of Tien's journey. When we look at Tien's entire journey, his transformation becomes much more meaningful. He begins as a nobleman's son who believes that strength means becoming a warrior. His father believes something different. He tries to protect Tien by sending him away. Tien dislikes the peaceful life. Then tragedy destroys everything. He becomes a fugitive. He becomes a prisoner. He faces a crocodile. He is rescued by warriors. He learns martial arts. He becomes part of a new family. He becomes a leader. And finally, he returns to face the man connected to his family's destruction. Every stage changes him. The child becomes a survivor. The survivor becomes a student. The student becomes a warrior. The warrior becomes a leader. And the leader becomes an avenger. Why this story works for a martial arts movie. What makes this storyline effective is that the action is tied directly to Tien's character. The fighting is not simply included because the film needs spectacular scenes. It represents his development. At first, Tien cannot protect himself. Later, he can defeat trained fighters. Eventually, he becomes capable of challenging powerful opponents. The audience witnesses that progression. The result is a character whose physical abilities feel earned. The film also uses traditional dance and martial arts as interconnected elements. That connection is especially meaningful because Tien's father originally sent him away to learn dance as a way of protecting him. The skill he once disliked eventually becomes part of his identity. Final analysis. Ong Bak 2. The beginning presents Tien's story as a tragic transformation shaped by violence, survival, and revenge. In 1431 Siam, Tien begins life as the son of Lord Sihadecho, a nobleman who wants nothing more than to protect his child from political enemies. Sihadecho sends Tien away to learn dance under Master Bois, hoping to keep him out of the dangerous conflict surrounding the family. But the plan fails. A betrayal within the household exposes Tien to danger. Sihadecho and his household are massacred by Rajasena and a mysterious masked assassin. Tien escapes, only to be captured by slave traders and thrown into a pool with a Siamese crocodile. His life appears to be over. Then the Far Beak crew arrive. Chernang sees something extraordinary in the boy and saves him. Tien is brought into a new world where martial arts, discipline, and survival become his education. Years of training transform him. He passes the group's tests. Chernang adopts him. Tien becomes his heir. He rises to become a field leader. But despite everything he has gained, he cannot forget the family he lost. His desire for revenge remains. Eventually, he tracks down the slave traders and confronts the people who once treated him as helpless. He then makes a blood oath to avenge his family. With Chernang's blessing, Tien travels alone to Rajasena's palace. There, during a celebration, he uses a disguise inspired by Kon performance to infiltrate the palace. Adult Pim's dance reminds him of his childhood and the peaceful life that disappeared. But Tien has come for one reason. Revenge. He attacks Rajasena and appears to bring down the man who destroyed his family. Yet the victory is not as simple as it first appears. The story leaves Tien surrounded by unanswered questions and unfinished conflicts, setting the stage for the continuation of his journey in Ong Bak 3. Ultimately, Tien's story is not just about learning how to fight. It is about what happens when a person loses everything and decides that becoming powerful is the only way to survive. His journey begins with a child who wants to escape his peaceful lessons. It ends with a warrior using those very lessons as part of an infiltration into his enemy's palace. That irony captures the heart of Ong Bak 2. After spending years transforming himself from a helpless child into a highly skilled warrior, Tien finally reaches the point where he believes his long journey of revenge is beginning to make sense. He has confronted the people connected to his family's destruction, infiltrated the palace of Lord Rajasena, and attacked the powerful lord who appeared to be responsible for his suffering. For a moment, it seems as though Tien has finally achieved the justice he has been chasing since childhood. But Ong Bak 2, the beginning is not ready to give its hero a happy ending. Instead, the film takes Tien's journey into an even darker direction. His greatest challenge is no longer simply defeating an enemy. It is discovering that the people he trusted may have been hiding devastating secrets. When Tien returns to the village of the Far Beak Kroot, expecting to find his adopted family waiting for him, he discovers something deeply disturbing. The village is empty. There is no celebration. No familiar faces. No Chernang. No warriors waiting to welcome their leader home. After everything Tien has been through, he has returned to the only family he has known since childhood, and suddenly that family has disappeared. The silence immediately creates a feeling of danger. Tien does not know what happened, but he soon discovers that the disappearance of the far beak Kroot is connected to the darkest mystery of his past. An empty village. Tien's return should have been a moment of triumph. He had left the village with a promise from Chernang. He would complete his mission, avenge his family, and return to become the leader of the far beak Kroot. Instead, he arrives to find emptiness. The place that once represented safety and belonging has become strangely quiet. For Tien, this is another reminder that nothing in his life remains stable. His biological family was destroyed. His childhood home was lost. His adopted family is now missing. And the man who once became his father figure is nowhere to be found. The audience is immediately encouraged to wonder what happened. Did Rajasena discover the location of the bandits? Were they attacked? Did Chernang betray them? Or is something even more complicated taking place? Before Tien can find the answers, a familiar figure appears. A masked warrior. And this person is connected directly to the death of Tien's father. The masked assassin returns. Tien recognizes the masked assassin as the mysterious warrior who was present during the massacre of his family. For years, this figure has represented one of the darkest unanswered questions in Tien's life. Who was behind the mask? Why did this person participate in the destruction of his family? And why did this mysterious fighter continue to remain hidden? Now, Tien finally has an opportunity to confront him. The emotional weight of the encounter is enormous. This is not simply another fight. Tien has spent his entire life carrying the memory of his father's death. The masked assassin is connected to that memory. So when Tien attacks, he is not fighting only for victory. He is fighting for the child he used to be. The boy who could not protect his father. The boy who was forced to run. The boy who eventually became a warrior because he could not accept what happened. Now that boy's anger has returned in the form of a highly trained fighter. The fight explodes. Tien launches himself into the confrontation. His fighting style demonstrates how far he has come. The inexperienced child who once struggled to survive has become a highly adaptable martial artist. His years with the far beak Kroot have given him confidence and precision. He can move quickly. He can attack from unexpected angles. He can use weapons. And he knows how to turn his surroundings into part of the fight. But the masked assassin is not alone. More masked attackers suddenly emerge. The confrontation becomes a chaotic battle. Tien is surrounded. The situation appears overwhelming. But Tien has survived worse. He has escaped soldiers. He has survived slavery. He has faced deadly animals. He has trained under some of the most dangerous fighters in his world. He refuses to surrender. The elephant enters the battle. One of the film's most memorable elements appears during this sequence. An elephant becomes part of Tien's struggle. The elephant is not simply background scenery. It becomes an unexpected ally. Tien uses his understanding of movement, timing, and the environment to survive against the masked attackers. The combination of martial arts and animal movement gives the sequence a distinctive identity. It also reinforces one of the film's most important ideas. Tien is at his strongest when he adapts. He does not rely on one technique. He does not fight according to a fixed pattern. He uses whatever is available. His body, his weapons, his surroundings, and now, even the power of an elephant. The sequence demonstrates how much Tien has developed since his childhood. He is no longer the boy who simply tries to escape danger. He is actively controlling the battlefield. But Tien finally meets his match. After overcoming multiple attackers, Tien encounters someone far more dangerous. His name is Booty Sanka, also known as Crow Ghost. Booty is not simply another soldier. He is a sinister and formidable martial artist whose presence immediately changes the tone of the confrontation. Unlike the earlier attackers, Booty does not appear overwhelmed by Tien's speed or technique. He is calm, focused, dangerous, and most importantly, he is powerful enough to challenge Tien directly. For perhaps the first time in the story, Tien faces an opponent who seems to understand his fighting style and can counter his abilities. This is an important moment because Tien has spent years becoming one of the most skilled warriors around him. He has defeated numerous enemies. He has become a leader. He has learned different fighting techniques. But Bu Ti exposes the limits of his confidence. The warrior who cannot be defeated. The fight between Tien and Bu Ti is brutal. Tien gives everything he has. But Bu Ti remains in control. Every time Tien appears to gain an advantage, Bu Ti finds a way to respond. This is not the kind of opponent Tien can simply overpower. Bu Ti represents a completely different level of danger. The fight becomes a test of everything Tien has learned. And eventually, Tien loses. That defeat is crucial. For a character who has spent most of the story becoming stronger, losing to Bu Ti reminds the audience that mastery does not make someone invincible. Tien can still be defeated. He can still be overpowered. He can still be broken. And this time, the consequences are severe. Bu Ti takes the elephant. After defeating Tien, Bu Ti takes the elephant away. Tien is left vulnerable, exhausted, injured, and surrounded by enemies. The warrior who once seemed capable of overcoming anything is suddenly powerless. This is the beginning of Tien's darkest downfall. He has lost the fight. He has lost his advantage. And now the forces of Lord Rajasena are closing in. Rajasena is still alive. Then comes one of the film's biggest revelations. Lord Rajasena survived Tien's earlier attack. Tien believed he had killed him. But Rajasena had secretly protected himself with hidden armor. The apparent victory was an illusion. The man Tien believed he had defeated is alive. And now he has Tien exactly where he wants him. This revelation changes the meaning of the earlier palace confrontation. Tien believed his revenge had succeeded. In reality, Rajasena was waiting for his opportunity to strike back. The power dynamic has completely reversed. The masked assassin's identity. But Rajasena has an even greater revelation. He tells Tien that the masked assassin is none other than Chernang. The man who saved Tien's life. The man who trained him. The man who adopted him. The man who called him his son. Chernang. The revelation is devastating. For Tien, Chernang was not simply a teacher. He was family. After losing his biological father, Tien found another father figure in Chernang. Chernang gave him a home. He taught him martial arts. He helped him become a leader. He promised him a future. And now Rajasena claims that this same man participated in the murder of Tien's father. The emotional foundation of Tien's life suddenly begins to collapse. Why Chernang is working for Rajasena? The situation is even more complicated than a simple betrayal. Rajasena explains that Chernang has been forced into this position. The fate of his bandits is at stake. Rajasena offers to pardon the members of the Far-Beat Crute if Chernang finishes the job he failed to complete years earlier. Chernang must kill Tien. The choice is horrifying. If Chernang refuses, his adopted family may be destroyed. If he obeys, he must kill the son he raised. This creates one of the film's most tragic conflicts. Chernang has spent years teaching Tien how to survive. Now he is being ordered to become the person who ends Tien's life. Tien faces his adopted father. Tien is forced to confront Chernang. The situation is completely different from the earlier battles. Tien does not want to fight him. Chernang is not a stranger. He is the person who rescued him. The person who gave him a second chance. The person who transformed him from a frightened survivor into a warrior. The person who called him his son. But Chernang has been forced into a position where he must appear to be Tien's enemy. The fight is therefore filled with emotional conflict. Tien's body is fighting. But his heart is resisting. A father and son fighting. The confrontation between Tien and Chernang is tragic because both men understand what is happening. Chernang knows that Tien has grown into a powerful warrior. Tien knows that Chernang taught him almost everything he knows. There is a terrible irony in the situation. The student must fight the master. The son must fight the father. The warrior must fight the man who made him a warrior. This is not a battle either character truly wants. It is a situation created by political power and the brutal system surrounding them. Chernang eventually gains the advantage. He pins Tian down. For Tian, this is more than physical defeat. It feels like the collapse of the final relationship he trusted. Chernang calls Tian his son. In the middle of the confrontation, Chernang acknowledges Tian as his son. This moment is crucial. Even though Chernang has been revealed as the masked assassin, his feelings toward Tian are not necessarily simple hatred. The relationship between them remains genuine. Chernang did raise Tian. He did train him. He did care for him. And even now, he wants Tian to understand something about his destiny. He tells Tian to accept his own life in order to avenge his father. The meaning of these words is deliberately tragic. Chernang is telling Tian that his own sacrifice can become part of the larger chain of revenge. But Chernang also appears to be preparing for a final decision of his own. Chernang's final choice. Chernang breaks the blade of Tian's sword. Then, in a shocking act, he uses the broken blade to slash his own throat. He kills himself. The decision is devastating. Chernang refuses to become the person who kills his adopted son. Instead, he chooses his own death. At the same time, he may be attempting to protect the far-beat Kroot by satisfying Rajasena's demand in another way. The act is both tragic and deeply symbolic. Chernang has spent his life as a warrior. But in the end, his most important act is not defeating an opponent. It is choosing the fate of his own life. The meaning of Chernang's sacrifice. Chernang's death changes the meaning of Tian's entire journey. Before this revelation, Tian's world was divided into simple categories. His family was good. His enemies were evil. Chernang was his protector. Rajasena was his enemy. But now everything is complicated. The man connected to his father's death is also the man who raised him. The person who appears to betray him is also the person who sacrifices himself rather than kill him. This complexity makes the ending emotionally powerful. Chernang is neither simply hero nor villain. He is a man trapped by circumstances, trying to protect the people he loves while carrying the weight of his past actions. Tian's emotional collapse. After Chernang dies, Tian is devastated. He has lost his biological father. Now he has lost his adopted father as well. The two most important father figures in his life are gone. And Tian is left with almost nothing. He collapses to the ground, exhausted and emotionally destroyed. The soldiers surround him. He is no longer fighting. He has no strength left. He has lost the will to continue. For a character who spent years turning himself into a weapon, this is perhaps his greatest defeat. Not physical. Emotional. Rajasena's cruel revenge. Lord Rajasena now has Tian exactly where he wants him. Rather than simply killing him quickly, Rajasena orders that Tian be tortured slowly. The command demonstrates the cruelty of Rajasena's character. For him, this is not justice. It is revenge and punishment. He wants Tian to suffer. The warrior who once entered his palace with confidence is now helpless before him. This creates a powerful reversal. Tian spent years hunting Rajasena. Now Rajasena has captured him. The fall of the hero. From the beginning of the story, Tian's journey has been about rising. He falls from nobility. Then he rises through martial arts. He becomes a warrior. He becomes a leader. He seeks revenge. And now he falls again. But this time, the fall is much deeper. He has lost his family. He has lost Chernang. He has been defeated by Bhuti. He has failed to permanently defeat Rajasena. And he is now facing torture and death. The warrior who seemed unstoppable is reduced to a helpless prisoner. This is what makes the ending so dark. Karma enters the story. As Tian suffers, the film introduces the idea of karma. In the voiceover, Tian reflects on his fate and suggests that his suffering is connected to his bad karma. This idea adds a spiritual dimension to the story. Tian's journey has been dominated by violence. He has killed enemies. He has sought revenge. He has embraced the brutal world around him. Now he is forced to confront the consequences of that path. The film does not simply present his suffering as random misfortune. Instead, it connects his pain to the spiritual concept of karma. His actions have consequences. His choices have consequences. His desire for revenge has consequences. But Tien refuses to accept death. Even while acknowledging his suffering, Tien does not completely surrender. The voiceover contains an important idea. He will find a way to cheat death. This line changes the meaning of the ending. What appears to be the death of Tien may not actually be the end. The film leaves the audience with uncertainty. Is Tien really dying? Will he survive the torture? Has he somehow escaped? Or is the following imagery connected to another stage of his spiritual journey? The ambiguity is deliberate. The bearded Tien. The final image is one of the film's most intriguing. An older-looking Tien, now with a fully grown beard, appears standing in front of the Ong Bak Buddha statue. The image immediately raises questions. How did Tien survive? How much time has passed? Is this a vision? Is it symbolic? Has Tien escaped death? The film does not provide an immediate, simple answer. Instead, the scene functions as a bridge between Tien's apparent death and the continuation of his story. The fully grown beard suggests time has passed. The Buddha statue introduces a spiritual dimension. And Tien standing alive suggests that the warrior's journey is not finished. Why the ambiguous ending works? The ending of Ong Bak 2 does not offer the comfortable satisfaction of a conventional victory. Tien does not defeat every enemy. He does not rescue everyone. He does not return home to celebrate. Instead, he loses. He suffers. He is betrayed. His adopted father dies. And his future becomes uncertain. Yet the final image gives the audience one reason to hope. Tien may have fallen, but he has not necessarily been destroyed. The phrase cheat death becomes the key to understanding the ending. The warrior who survived the crocodile, slavery, countless battles, and political betrayal may have one more transformation waiting for him. Tien's journey from life to death, and back again. If we examine the entire story, Tien's journey can almost be understood as a cycle. First, he loses his old life. Then he builds a new one. Then that life is destroyed. Then he seeks revenge. Then revenge destroys what remains. Finally, he appears to die. But the final image suggests rebirth. The young nobleman's son has disappeared. The angry warrior has suffered. The adopted son has lost his father. And what emerges from this destruction may be a different version of Tien. The beard and Buddha imagery suggest a more mature and spiritually aware character. The Buddha symbolism. The presence of the Ong Bak Buddha statue is particularly meaningful. Throughout the story, Tien has been driven by violence. His life has been shaped by revenge. His decisions have often been motivated by anger. But the Buddha symbolizes a different path. Peace. Reflection. Spiritual transformation. The final image therefore creates a contrast between the warrior Tien was and the person he may become. The film does not explicitly explain what this transformation means. That is part of its mystery. But the symbolism suggests that Tien's journey may eventually move beyond physical strength. Perhaps surviving death requires something more than martial arts. Perhaps he must also overcome the anger that has controlled him. Buti's role in the story. Buti Sanka is also important because he represents the limits of Tien's physical development. Tien has trained under masters. He has defeated numerous enemies. But Buti proves that there are still warriors capable of defeating him. There is always someone stronger. Someone faster. Someone more experienced. Someone whose technique can expose your weaknesses. Tien's defeat at Buti's hands therefore becomes an important part of his development. The cost of revenge. The ending also forces the audience to consider whether Tien's revenge has truly brought him happiness. He wanted justice for his family. But what has he gained? His biological family is still gone. Chernang is dead. His new family has disappeared. He has been defeated and captured. His body is broken. His future is uncertain. Revenge may have given him purpose, but it did not restore what he lost. This is perhaps the film's most tragic lesson. Revenge can give someone a reason to keep moving, but it cannot bring the dead back. The tragedy of Chernang. Chernang's death may be one of the most emotionally complicated moments in Tien's story. For years, Chernang was the person who taught Tien how to survive. He gave him a family. He gave him a position. He made him his heir. But Chernang was also the masked assassin connected to Tian's father's death. This dual identity forces Tian to confront a painful truth. People can be both loving and flawed. They can make terrible decisions while still caring about others. Chernang's final act demonstrates that his relationship with Tian was not meaningless. He refuses to kill the son he raised. Instead, he chooses death. His sacrifice becomes the final lesson he gives Tian. The meaning of the beginning. The subtitle "The Beginning" becomes even more interesting after the ending. At first, it sounds like the film is simply describing the beginning of Tian's martial arts journey. But by the conclusion, it may mean something deeper. Tian's apparent death could represent the end of one version of himself. The final image of the older Tian suggests the beginning of another. The angry young warrior may have to disappear before a wiser version can emerge. That makes the ending feel less like a conclusion and more like a transformation. Connection to the next chapter. The story eventually continues in Ong Bak 3. The ambiguous ending of Ong Bak 2 creates a natural bridge toward that continuation. Tian's fate is unresolved. His physical condition is uncertain. His spiritual journey is incomplete. And his enemies have not disappeared. The unanswered questions become the foundation for the next chapter. Final analysis. The final section of Ong Bak 2, the beginning, is where Tian's revenge story reaches its darkest point. He returns to the far-beat Kroot village expecting to find his adopted family, only to discover that it is empty. Then the masked assassin from his childhood appears. Tian attacks, only to find himself surrounded by additional masked warriors. With extraordinary skill and unexpected assistance from an elephant, Tian manages to overcome several attackers. But then Buti Sanka, the sinister crow ghost, enters the battle. For once, Tian encounters an opponent who can completely overpower him. Buti defeats him and takes the elephant away, leaving Tian vulnerable to Lord Rajasena's forces. Then comes the devastating revelation. Rajasena survived Tian's earlier attack because of hidden armor. And the masked assassin is revealed to be Chernang. The man Tian trusted. The man who trained him. The man who adopted him. The man he considered his father. Chernang has been forced to complete the mission he began years earlier in exchange for Rajasena sparing the far-beat Kroot. Tian is forced to fight him. But Chernang cannot bring himself to kill the son he raised. He pins Tian down, acknowledges him as his son, and ultimately breaks Tian's sword before using the broken blade to take his own life. Chernang's sacrifice leaves Tian emotionally shattered. Rajasena then orders his soldiers to torture Tian slowly. In the voiceover, Tian reflects on karma and acknowledges the suffering that has come from his violent path. Yet even at the edge of death, he refuses to believe that this is truly the end. He declares that he will find a way to cheat death. Then the film delivers its mysterious final image. A bearded, older-looking Tian stands before the Ong Bak Buddha statue. The meaning is deliberately left open. But one thing is clear. Tian's story is not over. The warrior who lost his family has lost almost everything again. The man who sought revenge has discovered that revenge comes with a terrible price. The student has lost his master. The son has lost his father. The warrior has been defeated. And yet, somehow, Tian remains. That final image transforms the ending from a simple tragedy into a mystery. Perhaps Tian's greatest battle is no longer against Rajasena, Buti, or any other physical opponent. Perhaps his greatest battle is against the anger, hatred, and violence that have shaped his entire life. And that is what makes the ending of Ong Bak 2, the beginning, so powerful. Tian began as a young boy who wanted to become strong. He eventually became a warrior. But after losing nearly everything, he may finally have to learn what true strength means. Not simply the ability to defeat an enemy. Not simply the ability to survive. But the ability to rise after everything has been taken away. And as Tian stands before the Buddha, the story leaves us with one final question. Has the warrior survived death, or has a completely new Tian finally begun to emerge? When talking about Ong Bak 2, the beginning, it is easy to focus almost entirely on the spectacular martial arts, elaborate choreography, historical setting, and physical performance of Tony Jaa. But behind every fight, every confrontation, and every emotional turning point is a cast that gives the story its human dimension. The film depends on more than athletic ability. Its story moves through childhood, tragedy, friendship, betrayal, revenge, loyalty, and sacrifice. Because of that, the actors have to communicate both the physical and emotional sides of their characters. At the center of everything is Tien, played by Tony Jaa. Around him is a group of characters who shape his destiny in completely different ways. Some protect him. Some teach him. Some betray him. Some become part of his family. And others become obstacles standing between him and revenge. The cast therefore represents different stages of Tien's life. There is the young Tien, whose childhood is destroyed by political violence. Tony Jaa as Tien. The most important performance in Ong Bak 2 comes from Tony Jaa, who plays Tien. Jaa was already internationally recognized for his extraordinary physical abilities, but this film gives him a different kind of challenge. Tien is not introduced as an unstoppable martial arts master. He begins as a young nobleman's son. He experiences the destruction of his family. He becomes a fugitive. He is captured. He is rescued. He trains for years. And eventually, he becomes a highly skilled warrior. That transformation is the foundation of the character. Tony Jaa has to communicate Tien's development not only through dialogue but through physical movement. Early in the story, Tien is inexperienced and vulnerable. Later, his movements become more confident and controlled. The way he fights changes because the character himself has changed. This is one of the most impressive aspects of Jaa's performance. His body effectively becomes part of the storytelling. The audience can see the character becoming stronger. They can see his confidence increasing. They can see how his fighting style becomes more versatile. And they can also see the emotional weight he carries. Tien is not a cheerful action hero who fights simply because he enjoys combat. His violence comes from tragedy. He is fighting because he has lost his family. He is fighting because he wants revenge. And eventually, he has to confront the consequences of allowing revenge to dominate his life. Jaa's performance works because the physical spectacle never completely separates itself from the character's emotional journey. Tony Jaa as an action performer. Tony Jaa's greatest strength is obviously his physical performance. The film gives him opportunities to demonstrate Muay Thai-inspired techniques, acrobatics, weapon work, and various traditional fighting movements. But the impressive part is not simply that he can execute difficult techniques. It is the way those techniques become part of Tien's identity. Every stage of his training changes how he moves. As Tien gains experience, he becomes increasingly adaptable. He can fight multiple opponents. He can use different techniques. He can interact with his surroundings. And he can transition between styles with remarkable speed. This makes the action sequences feel like an extension of Tien's character development. For viewers watching the film as a martial arts spectacle, Tony Jaa provides some of the movie's biggest highlights. For viewers watching it as a character story, his physical performance communicates the transformation that words alone could never fully explain. Tony Jaa as co-director. Tony Jaa's contribution to the film extends beyond acting. He also co-directed Ong Bak 2 with Pana Ritikrai. That involvement is important because the movie is built so heavily around physical storytelling. The choreography is not simply something added after the story was written. Martial arts are one of the film's main storytelling languages. Tien learns through combat. Tien grows through combat. Tien faces his enemies through combat. And his relationships with other warriors are often defined through combat. Jaa's understanding of martial arts therefore becomes an important part of how the character and the film itself are presented. Nirut Sirijanya as Master Bois. Nirut Sirijanya plays Master Bois, the teacher connected to Tien's early life away from his family. Master Bois is an important figure because Tien's father sends him to learn dance rather than training him to become a warrior. For young Tien, this decision is difficult to understand. He does not see the value of a peaceful education. He wants strength. He wants action. And he struggles to appreciate the purpose of what he is being taught. Master Bois therefore represents an alternative path for Tien. His role connects Tien to art, discipline, movement, and tradition rather than violence. This becomes especially meaningful later because Tien's knowledge of movement and performance contributes to his ability to disguise himself during his infiltration of Rajasena's palace. In other words, the education Tien once considered useless eventually becomes valuable. Master Bois's presence helps establish this theme. Sometimes a lesson does not reveal its importance until years later. Sirajanya's performance contributes to the quieter side of the movie, providing contrast to the explosive martial arts sequences that dominate Tien's later life. Sorapong Chatree as Chernang. One of the most important performances comes from Sorapong Chatree, who plays Chernang. Chernang is much more than a martial arts teacher. He becomes Tien's rescuer, mentor, adopted father, leader, and eventual tragic opponent. When Chernang first encounters Tien, he sees something extraordinary in the young boy. Tien has almost nothing. His family is gone. He has been captured. He has been treated as a prisoner. Yet he refuses to surrender. Chernang recognizes that determination. Instead of abandoning Tien, he brings him into the far-beat Kroot community. This changes Tien's life. Chernang as a father figure. Chernang's importance becomes clearer as Tien grows older. Tien has already lost his biological father. Chernang gradually fills that emotional gap. He teaches Tien. He challenges him. He protects him. And eventually, he adopts him. Chernang also declares Tien his heir. That means Tien is no longer simply a student. He has become family. This relationship gives the later revelation about Chernang enormous emotional impact. When Tien discovers that Chernang is connected to the masked assassin from his past, his entire understanding of his life begins to collapse. The man he trusted most is connected to the tragedy he has spent his entire life trying to avenge. Sorapong Chatree's role is therefore crucial because Chernang must feel believable as both a powerful warrior and a caring father figure. If the relationship between Chernang and Tien did not feel genuine, the later confrontation would lose much of its emotional power. Chernang's tragic final confrontation. Chernang's final confrontation with Tien is one of the most emotionally complicated moments in the film. Rajasena forces Chernang to complete the job he failed to finish years earlier. Chernang is supposed to kill Tien. But this is the son he raised. The confrontation becomes less about martial arts and more about impossible choices. Chernang ultimately refuses to kill Tien. Instead, he chooses his own death. This gives Sorapong Chatree one of the film's most demanding dramatic moments. Chernang is simultaneously a warrior, a father, a former assassin, and a tragic victim of political manipulation. Surunyu Wongkrachang as Lord Rajasena. Surunyu Wongkrachang plays Lord Rajasena, one of the central antagonistic forces in Tien's story. Rajasena represents political ambition and power. Unlike Tien, who begins with almost nothing and has to fight for survival, Rajasena begins with influence. He has authority. He has soldiers. He has wealth. And he has political power. But his ambition drives him toward increasingly ruthless actions. His conflict with Lord Sihadecho eventually leads to the destruction of Tien's family. This makes Rajasena responsible for the chain of events that transforms Tien's life. Rajasena as Tien's enemy. Rajasena is particularly effective as an antagonist because he represents the world that Tien has been fighting against. Tien believes that if he becomes strong enough, he can confront the people responsible for his family's death. Rajasena becomes the embodiment of that target. But the film complicates their conflict by allowing Rajasena to survive Tien's attempted assassination. The hidden armor revelation is especially important because it completely reverses the situation. Tien thought he had one. Rajasena was actually waiting for his opportunity to strike back. Now Tien is captured. Rajasena has the advantage. And the revenge story becomes a story of survival once again. Santisuk Promsiri as Lord Sihadecho. Santisuk Promsiri plays Lord Sihadecho, Tien's biological father. Although his time in the story is limited compared with Tien's later years, Sihadecho's influence remains important throughout the film. He is a father trying to protect his son from a dangerous political environment. His decision to send Tien away to learn dance may initially seem strange. But his motivation is clear. He wants his son to survive. Sihadecho understands that Rajasena's ambitions have made Tien vulnerable. Rather than preparing his son for war, he attempts to remove him from the conflict. This decision also creates one of the film's most interesting ironies. Sihadecho sends Tien away to learn something peaceful. Years later, those skills become part of the warrior's journey. Sihadecho's importance to Tien. The death of Lord Sihadecho becomes the emotional foundation of Tien's revenge. Tien does not simply lose a father. He loses the future his father imagined for him. Sihadecho wanted his son to live. Tien eventually chooses a dangerous path filled with combat and revenge. This creates a powerful contrast between the father's wishes and the son's destiny. Sihadecho represents the peaceful future Tien could have had. His death represents the moment that future disappears. Primorata Dejudum as Pim. Primorata Dejudum plays the adult Pim. Pim is one of the most emotionally significant supporting characters because she represents Tien's childhood. Before the violence, before the revenge, Tien was simply a young boy living away from home. He formed a friendship with Pim, an orphan girl. Their relationship provides a glimpse of the innocent life that might have continued if political violence had not destroyed Tien's family. When the adult Pim appears later, she becomes a living connection to that lost childhood. Her presence during the palace celebration is particularly meaningful. Tien sees her again while preparing to confront Rajasena. For a brief moment, the past and present collide. Prarinya Kamko as young Pim. Prarinya Kamko portrays the younger version of Pim. Young Pim helps establish the emotional atmosphere of Tien's childhood. Her friendship with young Tien provides moments of warmth before the story becomes increasingly dark. The young characters are important because they allow the audience to understand what Tien has lost. Without these quieter moments, the later violence would not have the same emotional impact. Young Pim represents innocence. She is part of the world Tien remembers before his life becomes dominated by revenge. Nat Danai Kongthong as young Tien. Nat Danai Kongthong plays young Tien. This performance is especially important because the audience needs to see Tien as a child before watching Tony Jaa portray him as an adult warrior. Young Tien is curious, stubborn, and dissatisfied with the peaceful life his father has arranged for him. He does not understand why he has to learn dance. He does not yet understand the danger surrounding his family. And he certainly cannot imagine the future waiting for him. The contrast between young Tien and adult Tien makes the transformation more powerful. The child is vulnerable. The adult is formidable. But underneath the warrior is still the same person carrying the memory of his family. Patama Pant Hong as Lady Play. Patama Pant Hong appears as Lady Play. The character contributes to the noble household and the historical world surrounding Tien's family. Characters such as Lady Play help make the opening sections feel like a functioning social environment rather than simply a setup for the action. The noble household gives audiences a glimpse of the life Tien was born into. That makes the later destruction more impactful. The audience first sees a family and community. Then they see how quickly political violence can destroy it. Pechtai Wongkamlao as Men. Pechtai Wongkamlao plays Men. Known for his comedic and dramatic work, Wongkamlao adds another recognizable presence to the cast. His involvement is particularly interesting because Ong Bak 2 is much darker and more dramatic than a straightforward action comedy. The supporting characters around Tien help expand the world beyond the central revenge story. Men contributes to the broader ensemble of personalities that make the film's warrior community and surrounding world feel populated. The presence of recognizable performers also gives the movie additional character beyond its major stars. Dan Chupong as Booty Sangka Crow Ghost. Dan Chupong appears as Booty Sangka, also known as Crow Ghost, in an uncredited role. Although his role is not presented in the same way as the central cast, Booty becomes one of Tien's most formidable opponents. His importance comes from the fact that he defeats Tien. That alone makes the character memorable. Tien has trained for years. He has defeated numerous fighters. He has become a leader. Yet Booty exposes the limits of his ability. This prevents Tien from becoming an invincible hero. Booty's fighting style and sinister presence create a major obstacle during the final stages of Tien's journey. Supercorn Kitsawan as the guard in golden armor. Supercorn Kitsawan appears as the guard in golden armor in an uncredited role. The character belongs to the dangerous military world surrounding Lord Rajasena. The golden armor also contributes to the film's distinctive historical visual style. Characters like this may not have the same emotional importance as Tien, Chernang, or Rajasena, but they help create the sense that Tien is operating inside a powerful political and military system. He is not simply fighting one man. He is confronting an entire network of authority. Tim Man as the Black Ninja. Tim Man plays the Black Ninja. The character contributes to the film's broad collection of fighters and martial artists. One of the movie's notable characteristics is its willingness to incorporate different combat traditions and visually distinctive warriors. The Black Ninja therefore fits naturally into the film's larger martial arts world. His presence adds variety to the physical confrontations and reinforces the idea that Tien exists in a world populated by fighters with different techniques and backgrounds. Jiran Ngamdi is also part of the cast. Although his role is not as prominently developed as Tien, Chernang, or Rajasena, his participation contributes to the large ensemble needed to populate the historical world. The film frequently moves between nobles, warriors, guards, bandits, villagers, and fighters. Supporting performers such as Ngamdi help create that broader environment. Somdit Kula. Somdit Kula is another member of the supporting cast. As with many of the film's ensemble performers, his role contributes to the atmosphere surrounding Tien's journey. A movie built around martial arts and historical adventure requires a world that feels populated and believable. The supporting cast helps achieve that by filling out the communities and groups that Tien encounters throughout his journey. Kaicha Kampak D. Kaicha Kampak D, also credited as Geisha Kampak D, is also part of the cast. While the character does not occupy the same central position as Tony Jaa's Tien or Sorapong Chatree's Chernang, the performance contributes to the ensemble that supports the film's larger world. This is important because Ong Bak 2 is designed as a broad historical martial arts adventure. Its story requires many different kinds of characters to make the setting feel alive. How the cast works together. The strongest aspect of the cast is the way each major character represents a different part of Tien's life. Lord Sihadecho represents his biological family. Master Bois represents the peaceful education his father wanted him to receive. Pim represents childhood and innocence. Chernang represents his second family and martial arts education. Rajasena represents political power and the source of much of his suffering. Bhuti represents the limits of Tien's physical strength. Together, these characters create a map of Tien's transformation. Every person changes him in some way. Some teach him. Some protect him. Some hurt him. Some challenge him. And some force him to question everything he believes. Tony Jaa and Sorapong Chatree, the emotional center. The relationship between Tony Jaa and Sorapong Chatree is arguably one of the most important elements of the movie. Tien and Chernang's relationship begins with rescue. It develops through training. It becomes a father-son bond. And eventually, it becomes a tragic confrontation. The emotional power of their final fight depends on everything that happened before it. The audience has watched Chernang build Tien into a warrior. So when Chernang is forced to fight him, the situation feels deeply tragic. This is not simply a hero fighting a villain. It is a son fighting the man who raised him. The importance of the younger cast. The younger actors are also essential. Nat Danai Kongthong and Prarinya Kamko allow the audience to see Tien and Pim before the world becomes dominated by violence. These childhood performances create emotional contrast. The innocence of the early story makes the brutality of the later story more painful. When we see what Tien becomes, we remember what he once was. That is the purpose of the younger versions. They are not simply younger characters. They represent the lives that were lost. The supporting cast and martial arts world. The large supporting cast also strengthens the movie's martial arts identity. Ong Bak 2 presents a world where fighting styles are part of culture and survival. Different characters have different physical abilities. Some use weapons. Some rely on hand-to-hand combat. Others have distinctive movement patterns. This variety makes Tien's training feel more believable. He is not learning one universal fighting style. He is absorbing lessons from a diverse martial arts environment. The supporting fighters therefore help define the world in which Tien becomes a warrior. Why the cast matters. A martial arts movie can have spectacular choreography, but action alone cannot create emotional investment. The cast gives the fights meaning. When Tien fights a stranger, it is exciting. When he fights Rajasena, it is personal. When he fights Bhuti, it is a test of his abilities. But when he fights Chernang, the action becomes tragic. The difference comes from character relationships. The actors establish those relationships before the major confrontations occur. That is why the cast is so important to the film. Final perspective. The cast of Ong Bak 2. The beginning is built around Tony Jaa's transformation into Tien, but the supporting performers give that transformation emotional depth. Tony Jaa provides the extraordinary physical performance at the center of the film, portraying Tien as a character who grows from a vulnerable young nobleman's son into a highly skilled warrior driven by revenge. Nirut Sirajanya's Master Bois represents the peaceful path Tien's father wanted for him. Sorapong Chatree's Chernang becomes Tien's mentor and adopted father, creating one of the movie's most complicated relationships. Sarunyu Wongkrachang's Lord Rajasena embodies the political power and ambition that destroy Tien's family and eventually become the focus of his revenge. Santisak Prumsiri's Lord Sihadecho represents Tien's original family and the father's attempt to protect his son. Primorata Dejudum's Pim and Prarinya Kamko's young Pim connect Tien to his childhood and the innocence that disappears after tragedy. Nat Danai Kongthong's young Tien allows the audience to witness the character before he becomes a warrior. Patama Pant Hong as Lady Play contributes to the noble household surrounding Tien's early life. Pechtai Wongkamlao as Men adds another recognizable presence to the ensemble. Dan Chupong's uncredited performance as Bhuti Sanka, or Crow Ghost, provides Tien with one of his most dangerous physical challenges. Supercorn Kitsawan's uncredited guard in golden armor contributes to the film's military world, while Tim Man's Black Ninja adds another distinctive martial arts presence. Jiran Engam D, Somdik Kula, and Kaicha Kampak D also contribute to the broader ensemble that fills out the film's historical setting. Ultimately, the cast works because every major performer represents something different in Tien's life. His father represents the family he lost. Master Bois represents the peaceful path he abandoned. Pim represents his childhood. Chernang represents the family he found. Rajasena represents the enemy he cannot escape. Bhuti represents the limits of his strength. And Tien himself stands at the center of all these relationships, carrying every experience with him as he moves toward his destiny. That is what makes Ong Bak 2, the beginning, more than a collection of spectacular martial arts sequences. Behind every fight is a relationship. Behind every victory is a memory. Behind every defeat is a lesson. And behind Tien's transformation is an ensemble of characters who help turn his story from a simple revenge mission into a dramatic tale of family, betrayal, loyalty, sacrifice, and survival. The performances may be surrounded by breathtaking action, but the characters are what give that action its emotional weight.